hear about the resistance and how all this struggle took place in Germany. Now we're listening to our comrade.
Öncelikle merhaba benden de. Sanırım sempozyumda tek hukukçu veya avukat olmayan kişilerden biri benim konuşma yapacak olan. Ama ben de bir hak savunucusuyum, devrimciyim.
Hello to all of you. Maybe I'm the only person who is not a lawyer, but I am a rights defender, and I would like to say hello to everybody who are right defenders, and hello the peoples of the world struggling against imperialism, fascism, and Zionism. Today we have come together here to discuss the struggle for rights and justice and talk about what we can do. I'm here as a revolutionary from Devgenç, revolutionary youth from Turkey. I brought you the greetings on behalf of the resistors. I bring the greetings of Lena Açık, Lena Ilena Açıkgöz, who has been on hunger strike for 270 days today in Germany for the abolition of 129 anti-terror laws and the freedom of revolutionaries arrested under these laws. I brought you the greetings of Abolish Laws 129 Committee, which for a year now has been organizing a resistance tent in front of the German Ministry of Justice for the abolition of Laws 129. I bring you the greetings of
insan onurunu savunmak için bugün tam 170 gündür ölüm orucu direnişi yapan Nurettin Kaya'nın
I bring you the greetings of Nurettin Kaya, who is on their fast to defend human dignity against the prison models called SRY types, which is ex-morgue, and in other words, against isolation. He's been on hunger strike for 170 days. I bring you the greetings of 210 prisoners of the People's Front in the prisons of Turkey. Today, I'm here as Devgenç member to be their voice. I'm here not as Eda Deniz Haydaroğlu, but to be the voice of those who resist and of my people who struggle for justice. I'm a member of Devgenç, Revolutionary Youth. Devgenç has been fighting for independence against imperialism, for democracy, against fascism, and for socialism against capitalism since 1969. We have dozens of prisoners and dozens of martyrs on this path. We are facing the most intense oppression and torture of fascism. Today we have at least 12 prisoners in Turkey. We are struggling for free and democratic education against fascism in Turkey. In the European countries where we live, we struggle against imperialism, racism, and degeneration.
parasız ve demokratik eğitim için mücadele veriyoruz. Avrupa ülkelerinde ise emperyalizme karşı ve orada yaşadığımız en yakıcı sorunlara karşı, ırkçılığa ve yozlaştırmaya karşı
Against the racism, the drugs, we are struggling, which is one of our huge problems in Europe. I would like to briefly introduce myself to you. I was born and raised in Germany. My name is Eda Deniz Haydaroğlu. I am also a member of the Committee for the Struggle Against the 129 AB anti-terror laws in Germany. I am speaking on behalf of this committee in this symposium today. As Konstantina said previously, on 18th of March 2023, nearly a year ago, I started the indefinite hunger strike against the 129 AB anti-terror laws. I waged the hunger strike resistance for 313 days. 3 more comrades joined this resistance. We 4 people resisted for at least 313 days for the justice, for a fair trial. We resisted with our hunger. We resisted as we melted away day by day. We resist to introduce anti-terror laws to the peoples living in Turkey, to explain that these laws are the usurpation of our fundamental rights. we resisted to show the peoples that the fact that Germany imprisoned revolutionaries at the behest of fascism in Turkey and in this sense cooperated with the fascists in Turkey. I'm not going to go too much in detail because lawyer Ronald Meister explained these. But 129 AB laws, anti-terror laws, and they exist in the content of fight against terrorists. But the people who actually suffers from this is mainly the people who's anti-fascists and mainly the revolutionaries. If fighting against fascism is a right,
belirleyen olan o baskıyı ve zulmü yaşayan halksa eğer o zaman Almanya'da yaşayan Türkiye'li
then those
devrimcilerin
people,
faşizme
the
karşı
revolutionaries who are living in
faşizme karşı
Germany,
verdiği mücadele yargılanamaz
the
diyoruz.
struggle they're waging against
İster
fascism
bu
in Germany
efendim
cannot be put on
Marksist-Leninist
trial.
ideoloji olsun, ister
If this struggle is with
darbe
the
mücadele olsun,
Marxist
faşizme karşı
ideology or
mücadele
parliamentary struggle,
yargılanamaz
any
diyoruz. Ve bu
struggle
anlamda
against fascism cannot
bugün
be
Almanya
put on trial.
tarafından yargılanan
So
Türkiye'li
therefore, the
devrimciler
revolutionaries
bugün
who's been
AKP
tried
döneminde yargılanan devrimciler
in Germany, the
aslında
Turkish revolutionaries with the
Almanya'da
129 A and B
Türkiye ile
laws,
faşizmin işbirliğini göstermektedir.
shows clearly the
Ve bu
cooperation
AKP
between the
yasaları
Turkish and
Türkiye
German
faşizm uygulama
fascism.
yasaları
129
diyoruz. O yüzden
laws are laws to protect
biz
the
asıl olarak
laws of
adaleti
Turkish
açtık bu
fascism.
direnişe başlamadan önce ve direnişimiz bizi adalete doyurdu. Ve
We were
bizi
hungry
bir
for
direniş kalesi haline getirdi.
justice with this resistance.
Ben
Our
bugün
resistance
açlık
filled
grevinde
us with
bulunan
the feelings of
yurttaşım
justice.
Ilgın Güler,
We turned our body
benim
into
gibi ben
a
ve
fortress of
hala açlık grevine
resistance. I
devam
and my
eden
three comrades
yurttaşım
Ilgın
Abla,
Güler,
Lena İleni Açıkgöz,
Sevil Sevimli Güler,
Timur'un
and Lena
yıllarca
İleni
direndiği
Açıkgöz, who are on
ve
hunger
bu
strike
yolda
with me.
öğrendik
We're
direnmeyi.
still on hunger strike
Onlarla
today.
öğrendik
We are the
birbirimize
students of
azar
Ebru
işitip
Timtik.
ölümüne
We
direnmekteyiz.
learned to resist from our
Cennetten
sister Ebru.
Ebru ablanın
We
gözleri
learned from
üzerimizdedir.
her
Bu
that
yüzden
we
çok
must
mutlu,
resist
gururluyuz ve
to
onurluyuz.
death for justice when necessary. Ebru's
Biz
eyes were always on
Kırım'da
us while we were resisting.
şehidimizi tutsağın
That's
adil
why we are
yargılanması,
very
başta
happy and proud
tutuksuz
of her.
yargılanması için
We
direndik.
resisted
Açlık
against the
grevi
129 laws and for the fair
Açlık greviyle
trial
direnişimiz
and for the
kalkmayınca,
freedom of free revolutionary
annem
prisoners.
açlık bayrağımızı devralınca ve en son İhsan Cebile'nin kanser hastası
We
olan
suspended
İhsan
hunger
Cebile'nin tedavi
strike when the
hakkını talep
resistance
edince,
became
daha
popular,
doğrusu
when our
İhsan
families took
sözünü
over the hunger
edince
strike flag from
üç
us,
yoldaş
and
direnişimize
finally when
verdik
İhsan
Ilgın
Çepelik's
Güler,
right to
Sevil
treatment
Sevimli Güler
was
ve ben.
accepted.
Açlık
So
grevi
me,
direnişi
Ilgın Güler, Sevil
gerçekten
Sevimli Güler, we
haklarımızı almak veya yeni haklar, mevziler kazanmak için
suspended our
başlatılmış bir
hunger
direniştir,
strike
bir
for a
eylemdir.
moment. Hunger
Açlık
strike is a
grevi insanın kendi
resistance we
bedeninin
resort
ifade
to
olan
in
iddiaları
order to
almayı
take our
istemesiyle kendisine, ailesine,
rights
örgütlülüğüne,
which has been
halkına
confiscated
sığınarak
from us or to
vazgeçilmez
win
bir
new
yaşam
peoples and open
sağlamaya
new
karşı
fields in our
koymaktadır.
struggle. A hunger
Onurlu
strike is
hareket
the act of
etmektir,
inflicting
eylemdir.
pain on
Bu
one's own
eylem
body in order to
suçu,
resist
teşhir etme,
a crime or
halkın
attack
diktatörlük
committed against
zihniyetindeki
oneself,
bu haklı ve
one's
meşru
family,
eylemi
one's
çatıştırarak
organization, and
eylemdir.
one's people, homeland
Evet, bizim
by
bugün
refusing to
en büyük
take food
araçlarımızdan biri
one's own body
emperyalizmin
needs.
suçlarını teşhir etmektir ve biz açlık grevi direnişimizle
This action is an action to expose the crime, the criminal,
teşhir
and direct attention
devam ediyoruz. Ahlak ve
and
vicdan
support of
sahibi
the
olan
people to this
hiçbir
just and
insan
legitimate action
böyle
and
bir eyleme,
demand.
direnişi sessiz kalamaz, kalmayacaktır ve
So
biz bunu
nobody will be
tarihimizin
silent
en son ölüm
about
orucu direnişinde Ebru Timtikler'de
such a
gördük ve
resistance.
kendi
We've seen
direnişimizde
the
de
examples
bir
in the
kez daha
past with Ebru
kanıtladık.
Timtik and other prisoners.
Açlık grevi bağrında
We've actually
halkın
proved this
öfkesini
with our
açığa çıkarma
resistance.
adeti taşıdığı için çok etkili bir eylemdir. Açlık
Hunger
grevi
strike is a very
yalnızlık
effective
direnişidir.
action
Bu
because it has the power to unleash the anger of the
açlık
people.
grevi direnişin en büyük zaferi
It is this
asıl
essence
olarak
that
siyasi
constitutes the
zaferlerdir.
sanctioning power of
Biz
the
niye
hunger
açlık grevi
strike.
yaptık ve
The
neler
greatest
kazandık bu
victories of hunger
direnişimizle?
strike resistance are political victories.
2022
What
yılının
did we
Azeri
do on hunger
Kurtuluş
strike
Savaşı'nda bahsedildiği Mayıs
and
ayında
what did we achieve
yargısından
in
yaklaşık
May
2 yıl önce
2022,
üç
about 2 years
yoldaşımız,
ago?
devrimci gazeteci
Three of
Özgür
our
Emre,
comrades, revolutionary journalist Özgün Emre, revolutionary artist and Grup Yorum member İhsan Çibelik, and anti-fascist Serkan Küpeli were arrested under the 129B law, and they have been under arrest since that day, and they are on trial, and their trial still continues.
DHKPC üyeliğinden yargılanıyorlar ama
They've been
öncelikle
tried on being a member of terror organization, member of the HKPC,
tamamıyla demokratik faaliyetleridir.
but they are charged with
Eyleme,
what they charge with is not any terrorist activity, but their democratic activities. As Konstantina said, joining part, attending concerts, marches, or organizing these meetings or concerts becomes a crime. Participating in the media demonstration, participating in demonstration exposing fascism in Turkey is criminalized. Like actions for Nuriye Gülmen, Ebru Timtik is criminalized and deemed as criminal. Not only these, not only the political activities, but in the indictment, there are also some accusations that attending weddings, engagements, family and youth summer holiday camps, attending funerals, and carrying coffins are criminalized. For example, Özgür Emre is accused of attending the engagement of Grup Yorum members Sena Erkoç and Umut Gültekin and putting on the rings of the Grup Yorum members. This is what she's been accused of. They accuse İhsan Cibelik of attending the funeral of Birsen Kars, a martyr of the revolution in Stuttgart, Germany, and he's been accused of singing folk songs there. Who is Birsen Kars? She is the woman who actually witnessed the massacres in the prisons, which has been waged on the prisoners in collaboration of the Turkish fascist regime with the US imperialism against 24 prisons, called Return to Life operation, and their only intention was to break up the hunger strike, and they attacked 20 prisons at the same time, and 28 people were killed. And Birsen Kars was one of them who lived through this hell, and people, 6 people who was burnt alive. She was amongst them, and she managed to escape this fire, but this massacre and the marks of the burns were on her body, and as a result of this operation, she had contracted cancer in 2022. Unfortunately, she lost the fight to the cancer, and she was martyred. As we said before, it's not the cancer that killed Birsen Kars, it's the fascism and imperialism who imposed this cancer on her. She is very valuable to us, and is a very valuable martyr. Serkan Küpeli, İhsan Cibelik, and the Özgür Emre's indictment, this crime is in this indictment, and Özgür Emre is accused of being one of the women who has been carrying that coffin. Today, it's very clear they attacking our rights and freedoms. Not only that, but our honor. They attacking today Özgür Emre, İhsan Cibelik, and Serkan Küpeli. Not only them, but they are attacking all the anti-fascist and imperialist democratic struggles we have been waging in Germany for years. The aim of the anti-terror laws is to destroy all revolutionary democratic forces. Their goal is to imprison and isolate the revolutionaries, to make them give up their thoughts and destroy them, and thus to intimidate revolutionaries and anti-fascists who are fighting the same struggle. They say that if you participate in protests, if you struggle against fascism, we will imprison you. And this is how we will isolate you. They want to spread fear among the people and break their ties with the revolutionaries. They want to stop all our revolutionary activities. That's why we say that this resistance is a struggle for existence and extinction. With this resistance is not we defended and protected not our own existence as Eda Deniz Haydaroğlu, but existence of our thoughts, our revolutionary identity, our Marxist-Leninist ideology, and we said we are not the terrorists, you are the terrorists. This is why we started the resistance. Thanks to the to our resistance. We broke down those walls of fear. People from all over the world supported our resistance. Supportive statements and actions were carried out. Our resistance and the courts were intensively visited from people coming kilometers away from Sweden, Switzerland, England, Austria, Australia. People been attending to visit our resistance and the court hearings. Sport hunger strikes were organized. For example, in one day, from different countries, from Qatar to Dubai, Dubai to Saudi Arabia, India to Scandinavian countries, 1,400 people went on one day sport hunger strike with us and for our demands. And this is the force of the internationalism. The resistance made us strong in the courtrooms. Our comrades became the judges, not those who's been judged. The courts where our people normally hesitate to enter, we have turned it into zones of actions. On the one hand, our prisoners are agitating, our lawyers are defending the struggle against fascism. We, the audience, are making speeches, chanting slogans, singings, and holding commemorations. Every battle of wills is fought with morale. Whoever has the moral purity is always the victorious one. The moral high ground has always been ours. We are the victorious ones, not victims. That's why we won the victory the day we decided to resist. We won the support of the people. Whoever wins the people wins the victory. We started the resistance with the demands that prisoners be tried without arrest and that the 129 laws be abolished. In the process, new demands were added to these demands. One of them was İhsan Çebirek's right to treatment. Roland and Konstantin touch upon this. İhsan Çebirik is a cancer patient, but is the court panel of judges which postponed the biopsy for months and had it is been done thanks to our resistance has been delaying it's been delayed for months. Since January, they promised that the surgery will be performed on İhsan Çebirik. That's why we suspended our hunger strike. That's why, because İhsan's operation has not been carried out. That's why Lena Ilena goes still on hunger strike, demanding that 129 laws be abolished. But apart from the right to treatment, we made many gains during the case, although they may seem small. These gains are historical and great gains. The guarantee of greater victories is the ongoing hunger strike resistance of Lena Ilena Çiköz. What have we won? 129B prisoners are kept under heavy isolation. We have eased isolation on İhsan and Özgül, while 129B prisoners meet even with their lawyers in closed meetings. That is behind the glass partition. We made Serkan have open meeting with his wife and daughter. We wanted to put our comrades, they wanted to put our comrades on trial behind glass caves, glass panels. In the first hearings, they put them in glass cages away from their lawyers. They wanted to create the impression of a great terrorist and danger. We removed the glass cages after the third hearing. Özgür was forced to wear a prison uniform. We didn't make her wear it. Özgür went on hunger strike and won her right not to wear the uniform, and she's been wearing her own clothing, and she put her life on the line to have this right. Of course, we did not achieve all these gains through external struggles alone. Inside, our lawyers fought a legal struggle. They made dozens of demands, openly argued with prosecutors and judges, and defended the legitimacy of all kinds of struggles against Turkish fascism, but it was not the legal struggle that was decisive in winning these rights. The main thing was the attitude, statements, and stances of our prisoners inside the struggle we waged outside. On the street, that is the resistance, because the law, like everything else, is class-based. Today, both law and legislation are in the hands of the imperialists. So what is law? Imperialism and fascism make definitions according to their own class and political interests and impose them on the peoples of the world as international law. Law is the legalized will of the ruling class. Law is an instrument of class oppression in the hands of the bourgeois state. Under capitalism, the institutions that legitimize the order of the system of exploitation and private property are state law and parliament. The institutions work according to bourgeois democracy. The greatest visible weapons of the law and parliament is the disclosure of the rule of law. The rule of law is the greatest sport of the liberals. Imperialism has a problem of legitimacy. That is why they need laws. They try to legitimize their crimes with their laws. In other words, the laws serve as a towel, in a sense, in which they dry their bloody hands. As revolutionaries and peoples of the world who struggle for justice, we take our legitimacy and righteousness as basis, not the laws. The oppression, torture, and punishments may be in accordance with their own laws, but they may be legal, but they are not fair. We say that it is not legitimate after it is not fair. That's why we say that the 129 anti-terror laws in Germany are legal, but not are legal, but unfair. We are not law defenders, but we are rights defenders. What we defend as rights is a crime according to their laws. In this system, there is no democracy for the people. European democracy is also bourgeois democracy. Bourgeois democracy is nothing but the dictatorship of capital, says Lenin. Bourgeois democracy usurps our basic rights. What is right and crime? Right is defined as the source of legitimacy of action existence. Rights arise from freedoms. Freedom is the realization of necessity. Freedom is the consciousness that people have equal opportunity to benefit from all the opportunities that exist in all ideological, political, economic, cultural, social fields, i.e., the struggle for rights. It is also the struggle to create the freedom from which the right is born. The consciousness of getting rights is the principle of living with honor. Consciousness literally means the ability to recognize oneself and one's surroundings and consciousness. Consciousness is the fluid form of knowledge that walks into life. It is the steps of knowledge. It is the direction of our knowledge to practice and in our life. In that case, not knowing our rights makes us unable to claim our rights. Knowing our rights and redirecting our lives with this knowledge makes us conscious. It creates the consciousness of taking rights. What we call right, the imperialists call a crime. What we call a crime, they call a right. What we call murderers, they call freedom fighters. What we call revolutionaries, they call terrorists. What we call occupation, they call war against terrorism. What we call oppression, they call justice. They call the laws that we call usurpation of our fundamental rights as anti-terrorism laws. It is not an offense for Özgür Emre to wear an engagement ring, but it is an offense to hold her under captivity. It is not a crime for İhsan Cibelik to form a children's choir, to attend Grup Yorum concerts and attend the funeral, but it is a crime to imprison him and usurp his rights to treatment. Serkan Küpeli's participation in the 1st of May demonstration is not a crime, but separating him from his newborn daughter and imprisoning him is a crime. The taking away of our fundamental rights is a crime. Where there is right, there is justice, and where their right is lost, there is oppression. For this reason, there is a right at the very foundation and above all rights, the right to resist. Our only life is resistance. Our only way to exist is resistance.
Ve şimdi de korumak için kan ve can bedeli direniyoruz. Açlığımızla direniyoruz. Tarihten biliyoruz ki haklarımızı kazanmanın veya hak mevzileri
Our basic rights in bourgeois democracy were not granted to us by rulers. We, the peoples of the world, have won these rights at the cost of blood and lives. And now we resist at the cost of the blood and life to protect it. We know from history that the only way to win our rights and gain new positions of rights is through resistance. The right to resist is the mother of all rights. The rulers can take away our rights with their laws. They can never take away our only one right, and that is the right to resist. Since the foundation of the world, no oppressor has been able to destroy the right to resist. The right to resist has been an indispensable right for oppressed, exploited, and humiliated peoples in every period of the history of class societies. The exercise of this right has been just as difficult, and heavy prices have been paid for it. However, no matter what the cost, it has never been given up. Without this right, without the defense of this right, no right can exist. It is the imperialists who slaughtered 10 million in the first war of sharing and 50 million in the second war of sharing. The arch enemy of the peoples of the world is imperialism. We must unite, organize, and struggle against the oppression, exploitation, and tyranny of European imperialism and the AKP fascism it sports. The only way to win and protect our rights is to first become unconscious about what our rights are and to organize to seek and take these rights. The consciousness of seeking and obtaining rights is the consciousness of being organized and organizing. Only those who have the consciousness can organize and win their rights, because to be organized is to be strong. This is a necessity to win. The consciousness of seeking and obtaining rights must firstly be in our be us, the revolutionaries, because the leadership of the struggle for democratic rights always rests on our shoulders. Revolutionaries are also the defenders of the rights to education, health, housing, belief, freedom of thoughts and expression, freedom of organization, which peoples have won through resistances throughout the history. We raised this struggle with our hunger strike resistance. We created the consciousness of seeking and taking rights in our people. We created the feeling that we can resist and showed the peoples of the world again that we can win if we resist. We raised hope. We became hope for the peoples of the world. Now we will institutionalize and sustain this struggle for fundamental rights. To institutionalize is to organize. We will organize for our fundamental rights. We will open a fundamental rights association in Germany. Our goal is to open fundamental rights association everywhere, to form committees on this issue, to organize and to grow this struggle. We say bourgeois democracy is a 400 years old lie. The only real democracy is the rule of the people and socialism. I know it's long. I would like to make a call from here. Lena Eleni Açıkgöz still resists on her 270 days today to defend these rights that I have explained. We do not want her to die. We would like her to live. And therefore, we need internationalism. That's why we need the solidarity of the people of the world. The only reason we have actually suspended our resistance because the others reclaimed and supported our struggle, and the only reason to win this victory was the international support and solidarity. So it's our call here. We must all reclaim the action of Elena Chikos. We can visit the tent at Berlin, attend the court hearings, make protests. We should support her resistance, and we should not let her die. It's our right. It's our right. A fair trial is our right, and anti-terrorism laws should be abolished. And long live the struggle of the people of the world against fascism and imperialism. We will win by resisting and continuing to resist. Thank you.
Ευχαριστούμε την ΕΝΤΑ για την τοποθέτηση και για την
Thank you
περιεκτική
very much for your so insightful analysis, especially how you describe to us the struggle in Germany and how you explained to us about the combination of the struggle for fundamental rights that they try to steal away from us. Imperialists are trying to steal them from us, and how important it is for us to express our support to Elena Agios, who is carrying out the hunger strike in Berlin. Now, our last speaker for today will have the floor. This is Arach Estonba from the Basque country, a place with lots of tradition on resistance until today that also has to do with the protection of human rights and class struggle, and we are very happy to give him the floor.
Kaixo, Arratsaldeon. First of all, I would like to send a salute to all the political prisoners and exiled prisoners worldwide, and especially the Basque ones. In this presentation, as well as analyzing the repression, I will try to offer the keys to understanding the current situation from this perspective. In the context of the crisis in which we find ourselves, this issue is of vital importance, and I believe it is important, this question, and carry out an in-depth collective analysis both in the Basque Country and in other European countries. In order to do so, I will set out in the theoretical framework the need to understand repression as a system and then delve deeper into the function of law in political dynamics. Next, I will reflect on terrorism, analyzing the evolution of the anti-terrorist doctrine, more specifically in the case of the Basque Country. However, we must relate it to the European Union, since it is the institution that defends the interests of the hegemonic bourgeoisie in the region, and at the moment, it is totally aligned with the US bourgeoisie. It seems to me at least opportune in this context of systemic crisis in which we are immersed to include in the analysis both the European Union and the criminal organization of NATO. The proposed analysis from a just Marxist perspective, because of the framework it uses, must always be understood in relation to the Marxist theory of crisis. Although repression is a concept we use frequently, we have rarely taken the time to analyze it and understand what we mean when we talk about repression. In fact, this is also one of the objectives of repression: to push the repressed, who does not fully understand what is happening, to act defensively, hindering or preventing them from developing their struggle. Likewise, if we use all our strength and energy to respond to repression, we will not devote space to analyzing and thinking about the strategies to overcome it. This is called going into the anti-repressive spiral. For this reason, it is absolutely essential to analyze and understand that repression is an element that lies at the heart of the class struggle. The ideological aspect is also of great importance. This is the starting point for saying that the struggle of the working class is called terrorism, and the violence of the bourgeoisie and the capitalist classes is called war or repression. In this way, not only is capitalist domination and oppressions deriving from it ideologically legitimized and normalized, but the different ways and options to fight them are de facto criminalized before they can even begin to be developed. It is important to understand repression as a system and not in a static sectoral way. Failure to do so can lead us to understand repression only as police violence or at most as the intervention of some repressive institution, thus losing the ability to analyze the complexity of reality. The repressive system must be analyzed as a dialectical, dynamic, contradictory, and totalizing system. Only in this way will we be able to understand and confront repression in its totality and in each historical moment. The exploiting class uses the state to protect the conditions of production and to keep the exploited class oppressed by force. Even so, today it is important to take into account, beyond the state, the parastatal power and the non-state powers. However, while we should not underestimate the capacities of the state, neither can we conclude that it is all-powerful. In order to make a proper analysis, we need to look at the state's internal difficulties and obstacles to renewal. The state needs time to be able to change the repressive system. In addition to internal obstacles, it needs to overcome bureaucratic inertia, sectoral and corporate interests, etc. But what's the repressive system? We can define the repressive system as a structure totally that integrates different levels, areas, spaces, and means that are different but functional to that totality. The really powerful state apparatuses ingeniously control the working class by other means. The most efficient repression is that which is unseen, that which makes the oppressed look oppressed by themselves, and which therefore makes it possible to conceal the violent character of the state and to guarantee social peace. In other words, assimilation. Okay, sorry for the interpreter. Although globalization has led to talk of the disappearance of the state is still responsible for carrying out repression, which is why, without ignoring structures such as the European Union and NATO, I will focus on the development of violence by the state, the law, the police, and the judicial apparatus in particular. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels gave us in the Communist Manifesto a very precise interpretation of law, stating that it is the materialization of the will of the bourgeoisie. On the one hand, laws are made by those in power, and on the other hand, those in power are given a monopoly of violence to enforce those laws. In today's capitalist society, this is done through the state. Now, although laws are the class will of the bourgeoisie, they respond to a dialectical reality and can be conditioned by the struggles of the working class. Faced with mobilization and protest, the enemy state is faced with two options: accept the demands or repression. Most likely, a combination of the two will occur in order to nullify or neutralize the revolutionary elements of the protest. And the outcome will depend on the correlation of forces between the two sides. This makes repression an indispensable element according to which the bourgeoisie will be more or less able to maintain its position and therefore will be able to close itself off or be more open to change. Law is a fundamental instrument for this. There are countless ways of repressing protests, not to mention ideological war to prevent future protests and to achieve an increasingly assimilated society. At this point, we must take into account the Marxist theory of the crisis and the tendency of the rate of profit to fall, which implies the passing of laws contrary to the working class in order for the bourgeoisie to continue acquiring surplus value. We must be clear that it will be necessary for the bourgeoisie to increase the exploitation of the working class in order to maintain the rate of profit. And in this task, law will be one of the main keys, since it will reflect exploitation in the form of law. As a consequence of the curtailment of rights, it can be assumed that the working class will take up the struggle in its defense. However, if this happens at a time when any organization is forbidden by law and the legal, police, and judicial instruments of the state are so developed, especially if the legitimation of the state and the criminalization of dissent are widespread in society, it is clear what the situation of the correlation of forces is. As a result, oppression will be easier. While it is true that the bourgeois states have mechanisms to repress the organization and struggle of the working class with anti-terrorist policies, they gain greater impunity, as they are an instrument to increase state control and criminalize any dissent. And historical development has shown us that anti-terrorist policies are especially necessary in context of crisis. At the international level, there is no agreed definition of terrorism. However, most definitions list acts that are common crimes under criminal codes. They qualify the political motivations for committing them and transform them into terrorism. There is no doubt that counter-terrorism policies, and in particular, the criminal law developed in this regard, meet all the characteristics of what is known as the criminal law of the enemy. Consequently, impunity is legalized, all the more so given how weak and malleable terms such as terrorism are. If we analyze the anti-terrorist legislation of our environment, we see that they fulfill the same characteristics. The 1950s and 60s saw the birth of various revolutions and liberation struggles: China, Algeria, Palestine, Cuba, Vietnam, the Black Panther Party in the USA, Basque Country also, direct heirs of the Soviet Revolution. They were also significant steps on the path of the struggles carried out by the working class throughout history. Those fires lit many other flames: Chile, Nicaragua, El Salvador, the German RAF, the Red Brigades in Italy, the resistance that broke out at the Polytechnic University of Athens against the military junta, Portugal, Països Catalans, Galicia. These events call into question the hegemony of the capitalist class and the very durability of the capitalist system, and the response against them was also tailor-made. Several dictatorships were imposed by coup d'etat or by other means, for example, Chile and Argentina. The dictatorships in force, such as Franco's, intensified the persecution of the working class. Although they were being prepared beforehand, the Condor and Gladio operations, designed and directed from the USA, for example, also date from this period. In all these cases, measures were implemented which, whether made possible by the exceptional situation offered by the dictatorships or through dirty or paramilitary warfare, were aimed at physically eradicating the insurgency. Structures such as NATO enabled the bourgeoisie to carry out all the above-mentioned attacks, and many others that it would carry out later. All this was developed under the pretext of making destabilizing or terrorist elements disappear in a struggle against any revolutionary process, which resulted in the USA created the conditions in the 1980s to be the only hegemony and world power, which was consecrated in the 1990s with the fall of the USSR. Faced with the globalizing discourses of the capitalist classes, including summits such as G7, G20, etc., anti-capitalist organizations began to organize international social forums: Sao Paulo, Seattle, Genoa. In Europe, moreover, some flames were still burning brightly, especially in Ireland and the Basque Country. It is no coincidence that at that time, in the 1990s, the Spanish state carried out in Euskal Herria, Basque Country, the experiment of what would become the worldwide anti-terrorist doctrine. Under the leadership of George Garzón, the doctrine known as Everything is ETA began, with the judiciary being the most responsible for developing this area of repression. The year 2001 was a turning point in terms of repression. Until then, there had been specific anti-terrorist laws in various international legislations, all of which were undeniably exceptional. But with the internationalization of the protest, the global capitalist class had to develop other kinds of repressive instruments. It is essential to place the assassination of Carlos Yolanev, for example, in this context, as it is a clear example of this qualitative leap. Al-Qaeda's attack on the Twin Towers in New York on 11 September 2001 gave way to a new counterterrorism doctrine that had begun to develop in the late 90s. At a time when the US succeeded in bringing a unipolar world under its command, this counterterrorism doctrine was used to reinforce and re-legitimize the Atlanticist axis. The idea was propagated that this was a war for the democratic West against other uncivilized countries. At the same time, rights and freedoms were increasingly curtailed. Images of torture in Abu Ghraib or Guantanamo Bay, hidden flights, forced disappearance, etc. None of this was new, as we have said before, but now it was done in the name of democracy against an enemy that lacked legitimacy in society. Thus, it began to sink into people's consciousness that exceptional actions were beneficial when it came to terrorism and that it was necessary to protect bourgeois democracies. Moreover, some of these exceptions acquired a legal nature in several cases. In this context, the European Union is once again aligning itself with the US. In short, it became clear that they share the same capitalist interests, as can be seen from the framework decision issued by the European Union Council in 2002. In it, it was set out the definition of terrorism for all states and obliged them to develop a specific anti-terrorist legislation by the end of 2002. Until then, only 6 European Union states had a specific anti-terrorist legislation: Germany, Spain, France, Italy, Portugal, and the United Kingdom. The rest punished actions committed by terrorist groups as ordinary crimes. In some of the states mentioned and that developed anti-terrorist legislation, there was the presence of several armed organizations, for example, RAF, Brigate Rosse, ETA, IRA, Terrellura, Grapo, Liga Armada Galega, etc. And it can be understood that this exceptional legislation was developed to combat them. The step taken by the European Union was a relief from the bureaucratic legal constraints that states could have. Public opinion, without thinking about it, took its side in the fight against terrorism and in the defense of liberal democracies, and this led to the drawing up of lists of terrorist organizations. As a result, the repression that already existed at the time increased, and different processes were facilitated to act against dissidents, facilitating the transfer of detainee between states, cross-border police actions by states, Europol, etc. The aforementioned lists are still in force, and among other organizations, including Basque ones, the Palestinian PFLP, for example, is still on them and has allowed the development of new framework decisions that criminalize several organizations linked to Palestinian resistance today. In the case of Euskal Herria, Basque Country, we can see how throughout the history of its liberation, there have also been different phases in the evolution of repression. The fascist uprising meant the establishment of Francoism, and the disappearances, executions, humiliations, etc. in the early years can be understood from the logic of the uprising, the logic of the annihilation of the enemy in a clear way. From the 1950s onwards, the plan to annihilate the enemy took on other forms. Also, being a dictatorial regime allowed exceptional policies to be established against dissidents, such as executions, torture, extrajudicial killings, imprisonment, trials, summary trials, etc. The Burgos trials and the executions of Txiki and Otaegi, along with 3 other members of the FRAP on 27 September in 1975, were very significant events at the time. The French state initially recognized the political refugee status of the Basques, who fled to the northern provinces under French rule. Okay, sorry again. Yeah, I'm finishing. So, yeah. Okay. So, the French changed its policy and began to persecute the refugees. With the 1980s, police abuses increased, case of torture multiplied, the introduction of drugs from police station, etc. was promoted. The dirty war also had a particular impact, and several paramilitary groups emerged. The same plan in that decade also meant that a new repressive state strategy to act in the political, legal, social, and police spheres. If we analyze it carefully, we will see that it is similar to the counterinsurgency manuals applied by the CIA in Latin America, but in this case, located in the Basque Country. Industrial reconversion, for example, was essential for the development of the economic convergence policies undertaken during Franco's regime on the road to the creation of the European Economic Area, giving rise to intense struggles, among others, at the Euskalduna and Altos Hornos. It was important for the Spanish bourgeoisie to put an end to the struggle of the Basque working people, and to do this, it was essential to annul the movement organized by the working class in the Basque Country. For example, then was when the anti-terrorist legislation was introduced into the Spanish Penal Normal Code. In the 1990s, on the other hand, the Basque National Liberation Movement set the nation-building strategy in motion. As we have seen above, the first attempts at an anti-terrorist doctrine in the late 90s were made in the Basque Country by the Spanish state. The French state continued with its assimilation policies, despite the fact that at the time it considerably tightened cooperation with the Spanish state and initiated several judicial and police actions. It was also a decisive decade for the shaping of the European Union. It was absolutely essential to remove any hint of resistance that might hinder the development of the capitalist project. Today, all the repressive machinery mentioned above is still in force, although it is not visible given the new context created after the disappearance of ETA. Anti-terrorist legislation has not disappeared, and even today, there are still many Basques who have to go to the Spanish National Court to testify or be tried for terrorist crimes. It is difficult to carry out any debate or transmission of the struggle for the liberation of Euskal Herria properly, given the risk of being accused of glorifying terrorism and ending up in the Spanish National Court. In any case, in the current repressive context, there are several factors to take into account. On the one hand, the names of some of the new organizations and agents that have emerged in the Basque Country since 2010s have appeared in the Spanish media, linking them to terrorism. On the other hand, at the end of 2010s, several media outlets started to talk about the possibility of linking the emerging housing unions in Països Catalans to the status of a criminal organization, thus involving them also in the Spanish National Court. The struggle in defense of the land and ecology is gaining importance in the Basque Country in the face of the macro projects promoted by the European Union with the approval and encouragement of social democracy. It is to be expected that we will see actions against the environmental movement. In this sense, we can see how numerous people in Euskal Herria are being arrested, prosecuted, and tried for participating in various mobilizations, protests, or forming part of collectives. In addition, there are already cases of interrogations directed at political activists in ad hoc controls, threats, requests for collaborations, etc. In the current context of crisis, in this terrible onslaught against the working class, all the machinery we have mentioned is in the hands of the Spanish and French states. If there is one thing we must be clear about, it is that the state's instrument of violence of the bourgeoisie will attack every step taken by Euskal Herria or any other working people towards achieving their liberation. There is no possible coexistence between the two classes in constant contradiction. The repression of the bourgeoisie is a constant reminder of this, especially when it manifests itself in its most violent nature. So, as a conclusion, we could take the sentence of Ebru Tintik: all obstacles to the right of peoples to organize and resist oppression, anti-terrorism laws, and all oppressive laws used as weapons against the peoples must be abolished. And I would add that to achieve this aim, we have to do it necessarily with the people.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ και τον Αράτς και για την τοποθέτησή του και για την εικόνα από τη χώρα των Βάσκων.
Thank you very much for portraying the situation of the Basque Country. We will continue the discussion tomorrow too. Thank you very much for your presentation today. We finished our first day of the first international Congress in memory of people's lawyer Ebru Tintik. Tomorrow we will start at 10:30. At 10:30 we will start the first thematic session, and then we will have the workshops. So 10:30 to 12:30, the first thematic session on attacks on lawyers and defenders and how we fight back. And at 2 to 5:30, we will have 3 different workshops. Thank you very much, and we'll see you tomorrow. Regarding Fouad, the internet connection is very poor in Lebanon. He's trying to send a video. He cannot do that, but tomorrow he will do that. In the first thematic session, he will try to communicate with us tomorrow.